Ryan, obviously our first chance to talk to you since Kevin's decision to go to Tulsa. So most directly, how does that affect the staff preparation for the bowl? And then what are you thinking as the next step for you as far as replacing that position?
Yeah, so we'll kind of cross that bridge after the season. We're going to just focus on right now. But Kevin, we sat down and talked about this. We knew it was a possibility. Is that he's going to continue to coach throughout the bowl game. He's been doing a great job of that. He's got working 24 hours a day right now, but he's keeping certainly Ohio State in our path to the national championship first and foremost in his mind, and then he's obviously got a lot going on planning ahead at Tulsa, but he's been at practices. He's going to be here again this weekend, and so it's a challenge when you have to kind of juggle both things, but he's going to make sure that he does everything he can to help us win this.
It's kind of widely out there that Keenan would be the guy that you're looking to replace that. What can you say about him and just how he fits into what you're doing now, I guess, heading into the bowl game?
Yeah, we're not going to do anything formal till after the season, but I can say this, that Keenan Bailey is just he's an excellent coach. He's a really sharp young man who's going to do unbelievable things in his career. And the relationships he's built over time with former players, current players, recruits, and family has been excellent. And Keenan's turned down a lot of opportunities to go other places over the last couple of years, and he's stayed here and been a huge help. So he's got a very bright future ahead of him.
Fourth row left, Jacob Benj, the Lantern.
Hey Ryan, we talked with you last week, and you mentioned how just with your team now in the CFP, it's like a second chance on the season. And just now with a week for it to set in and to be around the team, just how much more real has that realization become in your preparation to play Georgia?
Yeah, inside of 3 weeks now. We talked about it going into that final weekend, and then coming out of it, just a refocus. And I think our practices have been spirited so far. I think the guys have really had good urgency about them. I think they have a good feel for what this is going to be like, and just the electricity and how important every play is going to be into this game. So we're still in the fundamental phase. We're going to start making the transition into game planning here soon. And then we get down to bowl week. So we have 3 phases when we talk about bowl practice. But the energy's been really, really good, and guys are finishing up finals now, and now it's just going to be all football.
Far left, Jared Smalley, WCMH.
Hi Ryan. Now that you've had time to evaluate, I know you haven't had a lot of time, but you've had time to evaluate Georgia. You look at them offensively, and it's an interesting group, right? Because it's not a group that's loaded with superstars at receiver and a superstar running back, but they have extraordinary depth at tight end, and they have as veteran a quarterback as you can have in the college game. I'm just wondering how you evaluate them offensively and their unique nature as an offense.
Yeah, I think they do a great job of playing off the defense and special teams. All 3 are put together really well. But specifically on offense, I think Bennett kind of is the one that gets it all going. And certainly they have talent across the board. Their offensive line's big. Both tight ends are very, very talented. Running backs are very good. Receivers are very good. But it's the quarterback that makes it all go. And he's played unbelievable, deserved certainly an opportunity to be down in New York City on Saturday night. And what an unbelievable story of somebody that came through a lot of adversity along the way in his journey to get to where he's at. So from afar, it's been a joy to watch him compete. And so, yeah, I think they do multiple things. They're creative in how they do them, and they're certainly playing good football here down the stretch.
Second row left, Steve Hellwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, this hadn't come up, I don't think, either after the game or last Sunday, but Dallin Hayden, he had 2 100-yard games and then went into the Michigan game. He really only had 2 carries. Chip Trianum, who hadn't carried the ball all season, gets the opportunity. Just in hindsight, could that situation have been different? What held Dallin back from not playing in that game, I guess?
Yeah, just kind of the flow of the game, and Tony, makes that decision based on how things are going. And I thought in the game that Chip ran well. I thought he did some really good things, especially for his first game, getting put into that environment. So, certainly looking forward to getting some health back in that room. But Dallin's going to be a big part of this bowl game.
Matthew Jones, is he looking okay to be able to go maybe?
Yeah, everybody's, for the most part, everybody's healing up. So good to get everybody back on the field.
Third row left, Dan Hope, Lebanon Warriors.
Ryan, how are you kind of balancing it right now with everything that's going on with the transfer portal and obviously recruiting early signing period next week, like how are you balancing kind of maybe evaluating potential additions for your team while also preparing for a bowl game?
Just don't sleep. That's it. You're not allowed to sleep. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have practice today and then be on a plane for the next 2 days and come back for practice Thursday. So it's just that's December. I was laughing with somebody growing up. When you hear the month of December, you think about Christmas and holiday times and everything else. And when I think of December, I think about bowl practice, I think about recruiting, think about home visits, think about transfer portal, think about all these different things. And it's with the early signing period, obviously that changed a few years ago, that everything got sped up here. But that's December in big time football, and our guys are working really, really hard, and don't get a chance to see your family very much this time of year. But that's part of it. And that's what you want to be. You want to be in the CFP this time of year. You want to be involved with great recruits. You want to have all this stuff going on, and that's exciting. So it's energizing because obviously you're relevant this time of year, and you're involved in some great recruits, and you're swinging as hard as you can. So this is exactly the way you want it, even though sometimes you wake up with not a lot of sleep.
When you look at the roster construction for next year, what maybe do you look at as what you guys might need to do in the transfer portal?
We look at everything, and it's constantly changing, trying to do the best we can. Certainly for us, I think we've done a really good job of identifying the right fit here. It's very difficult to just walk into Ohio State and our culture and just walk onto the field because there's a lot of pride here, and guys have to earn their right to get on the field. So, certainly if there's something that we can do in terms of upgrade in a certain position, we'll always do that. That's our job. But we'll also take into consideration the right culture fit, the right fit for them, the expectation. If somebody comes into the program, they're going to have to earn their right to get on the field. We're not just going to guarantee when you come here, you're going to do this, you're going to get this many touches, or you're going to start the minute you walk into that locker room. I don't know how folks do that and then look at the players currently on their roster and say, I just guaranteed someone to come in and be a starter. And so we take all those things into consideration. But as you know, we have added guys, and I think we've done a really good job of being thoughtful in those areas. But, certainly the transfer portal has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's become like free agency. So it's something that we're going to be a part of.
Front row, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, how has NIL, which now people have gotten used to and are exploiting it,
Yep.
How has that changed recruiting, especially as we get down to the stretch? And Gene has talked about how it's the wild, wild west. And, I mean, how different is it, and how scary is it? You think you have commitments and maybe you don't?
It's become, I think it was never part of the conversation. Then it became part of the conversation. And it's trending towards being the conversation for a lot of folks. So as time has gone on, it's become more and more of a priority for folks. And so, navigating those times and adapting is important.
You guys put out a statement last week encouraging people to donate. How much of an issue is it for you guys right now?
Well, it's certainly a priority for us to make sure we have everything we need to support our players, and that's kind of, I'll leave it right there. And we have some folks that are really helping and doing everything they can, and that's great. And so we're going to need as much help as we can moving forward. But the great news is we have great fans who want to support it, and we're going to make sure we do everything we can to make sure our guys get what's fair.
Right next door, Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, speaking of one extra thing you have to deal with, I was also going to ask about NIL. How frustrated are you, and what would you like to say to maybe to the fans and businesses and just boosters, and just how frustrated are you compared to maybe some of the other schools out there and what they're doing?
Well, I just, we're going to need all the help we can get, but that's kind of the way it is across the country right now. And the great news is we're positioned really, really well in Columbus and with our fan base to do just that. And our team has done very, very well here on campus and over the last year. They've done great. So we're going to keep building towards that and just make sure that everyone knows that this is real. We're here, and yeah, certainly going to need their support.
Football question: what's the mental state of the team right now? Do you feel like we got our second chance and everybody's mentally locked in?
I think the biggest thing I notice is that this time of year, usually you're taking a big exhale and you're kind of catching your breath for finals. I just feel a bit of urgency when we walk on the field. I just feel a little bit of a different look in their eye. Like when we're on the field, we're out there to work.
Front row right, Austin Ward, Rivals.
Ryan, how much hope had you actually held out that Jackson might be able to get back in time for the playoff? I know it was trending this way for a while, but
yeah, it was frustrating for him mostly. I mean, nobody was more frustrated than Jackson. Nobody wanted to play more than Jackson. I know that. But yeah, it was tough this year not having him. We had a lot of the offense kind of designed around him, and then had to adapt as time went on, and hoped we'd get him back. But it never quite got to where he was comfortable playing, and then certainly got him reevaluated there the last month, and just got determined that he wasn't going to be able to make sense for him to go back on the field. Just too much risk there, and it was hard for him. I know it was really hard for Jackson this year to sit around and watch his teammates play and his body not allow him to play. And, I think, in a day and age where, you're not going to go out there and give a lot of detail about what the injury is, and so many people questioning and asking for him, that wasn't easy for him either. And I think, we knew that it wasn't going to be able to play this next month. It was, kind of ruled out by the doctors. And so they made the decision, just felt like it was time to kind of put it to bed so that he can get a little peace, because it was hard for him this season. Yeah.
I know this sounds crazy because of how good he is, but is there any part that's beneficial to you? Like, okay, this is the final decision. He's not coming back. They have a month to prepare everybody. I know you played all season without
Right.
him, but is there any part of that that's, well, we can't even have, there's no thought in your mind that Jackson's part of it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you just kind of move on from that, and you plan accordingly, which was what we've done all season. So, we were kind of moving forward without, and then if we did, it was going to be a bonus at some point during the season. But yeah, it definitely hurt not having him around for sure.
Right next door, Tim May, Letterman Row.
Yeah, just two quickies. Did you ever have any interaction with Mike Leach? Did you ever meet him, et cetera? And number two, you just outlined your schedule for the next, and not that necessarily a schedule contributed to what he went through at the end there, but the workload you guys all carry. But number one, that part about Mike, had you ever met him? What are your thoughts on him?
Yes, I met Coach Leach a couple times, and certainly have a tremendous amount of respect, and certainly want to really send prayers and thoughts out to his family and to all those down at Mississippi State, and all the folks that he's coached with and for, and the players. It's just 61 years old. That's just it really makes you take a deep breath, like you said, and think about life in general. Because life can move fast, and there's certainly a lot comes with this profession. But to lose him that young, it's a tragedy. And one thing, I guess, I didn't know him as well as others, is it looked like he enjoyed his time. He did, and it's like he did it his way, and there's a lot to be said for that. And college football is certainly going to miss Mike Leach.
And when you're sitting there Saturday night, and you're watching CJ, it was a good feeling he probably wasn't going to win it, but he was there. You know what I mean? At the Heisman. Are you proud of of how far that guy has come? I mean, what are the feelings you're feeling? And then number two, people keep asking me, what's his legacy? And I go, well, it really hadn't been totally written yet, but what do you think is his legacy to this point to Ohio State football?
Well, I think when you take a step back and you just look at things in general, the fact that this will be our third CFP appearance in 4 years. CJ was our fifth Heisman Trophy finalist in 5 years. Certainly there's a lot to be proud of there. But I think he also would like to win it. And that's part of it, because he's competitive. We're all competitive. But still, that night to me is about recognizing really good players and their seasons, and that to me was about that was CJ's night to get recognized again, even though he didn't win it, because of the high level of play that he's had over the last 2 years. And so I know he's very, very excited to play in this game. He's given a lot to Ohio State, and certainly that was a great opportunity for him to be with his family and get recognized for that. But he's going to work really hard over the next 2.5 weeks to play his best football here, in the CFP.
Thanks, man. Right behind him, Doug Maurice, Cleveland.com.
Just to double check, are you anticipating that Travion Henderson will practice and prepare for the Peach Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably give you an update on Trey here, probably in the next few days. I don't really have an update on where he is right now, as we kind of get off the road. So it's kind of like that with everybody, and I'm not sure exactly when we give an injury update, Jerry, on this. We'll have to talk about that. But as I get off the road, we'll get back to you on that one.
And what you had just mentioned, signing day, that's kind of like, for the NFL, that's kind of like the draft, right? And the portal, that's kind of like free agency. And I'm trying to imagine if the NFL had free agency and the draft in the middle of the playoffs. And that would be weird because, like, why would you do that? Why would you jam everything together at the same time? Especially in a world where the 12-team playoff is coming and you're going to be playing playoff games even earlier in December. Like, what are we doing?
I can tell you I've asked myself that question a few times over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I think what happens is because there's so much change that when decisions are made to make change, we don't always know what the ramifications are in 2 or 3 years out. And the early signing period certainly made a lot of sense for a lot of folks. It certainly saves a lot of energy and time in January, but it makes for a hectic December. Then with the portal opening up, it certainly made it even more hectic. So, as time changes and things change and we try to adapt the best we can, sometimes we don't always know what the ramifications are of decisions until we get a couple years out. And all these happening at once has certainly made December crazy.
Just in general, do you think it would be beneficial for college football for the teams that are still trying to finish a season to be able to focus on that season and then deal with the next season roster management when the first season is done?
Ideally, yes. I just don't know, again, what that all means. If you make that shift, how does that change, other things? But yes, in a perfect world, you'd like to be with your team this time of year for sure. But that's not the way it is, and so those are the rules, and we'll just make it work.
Right behind him, Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, you guys have played a good crop of tight ends at times this year.
Yep.
Georgia's tight ends are probably the best you guys will play. What about them stands out that makes them so special?
Oh, Bowers is can do so many things. He's very versatile, and Darnell's really just a massive human being who can just overwhelm you with his size and athleticism. So I think the first thing is their versatility. Second is their physicality. And anytime you can do multiple things as a receiver, running back, or as a tight end, then you can create mismatches. And I think they both do that.
Second row right, Bill Landis, Rivals.
Right, I want to follow up on Dallin, because when we ask you about him, you talk a lot about ball security. Is that something that is an issue in practice when we don't get to see it? Because it hasn't really come up in games, so I'm just kind of wondering how that might impact things. It just seems odd that he had played so well and then wasn't part of the plan on a day where you were missing one of your top guys and the other guy couldn't finish the game.
Yeah, no, the ball security is just something we talk about all the time as running backs. It's just the number one thing is when you hand the ball off, they got to do a great job with that. So no, that didn't play into the decision at all.
How, I guess, he's a young guy who had played well the previous 2 weeks. How did he take probably not being as part of the plan as I'm sure maybe he thought he would be, given what your running back situation was going into that game?
Yeah, it just kind of the way the game went. It just got a little, down the stretch, a little more protection, and so let Tony handle that part of it. But Dallin wants to play, and he's going to continue to play.
Right behind him, Tony German, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, we've heard rumors around the country of this recruit getting this much, that recruit getting that much. You were just talking about how it's become the conversation. What does the NCAA do? Like, where is the NCAA in all of this?
Well, that's a deep question that I'm not going to jump into right now. But I will say there are times where you ask that question, what are we doing? Yeah. I'll just leave it at that right now.
Got time for just a few more, folks. Front row, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, with this game and the location of the game, it's not a typical neutral site game because it's an hour and a half from Georgia's campus. What are you expecting as far as the crowd and contingencies, as far as maybe having the silent counts, things like that? Just how do you see that being a factor in the game? Well, just it's going to be an electric atmosphere, and we'll be ready for anything. And that it's a great venue for a game, and certainly I know it's going to be loud there. So I know Ohio State's going to travel very, very well, but we'll also be ready for a loud environment and just make sure we have all the tools ready if we need them.
Second row left, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
No, there's a way to
this doesn't come off accusatory, so I just have to go for it. Whether it was Jackson, how he came back, immediately got hurt, and he's right back out, and you're kind of waiting on that. And Travion and mine, it felt like every other week it was kind of musical chairs of which one was available, and even Travion came out and kind of revealed a little bit what his injury was. Has there been any discussion on, injuries happen, but in evaluating how they were handled in terms of whether players should be able to be available for games or not on a week-by-week basis when it feels like a guy like Trey who was playing 1 week and then a week later he's back in the boot and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean that's why we have our professionals and that's why we have doctors, and it's above my pay grade. So I kind of stay out of those conversations, and I mean, and there's different things that in the game of football you can be hurt and bruised and bumped and you work through it. There's other just injuries that you physically can't work through, and so that's part of football, and that's the frustrating part of football. But I certainly let all those decisions go to the doctors, and I stick to coaching football.
Fourth row middle, Andy Anders, Buckeye Sports Bulletin.
Yes, Georgia has one of the best defenders in the country, defensive tackle Jalen Carter. As a play caller, when you're scheming this up, obviously without giving too much of the game plan away, how do you to what extent does it impact your play calling to face a defensive tackle with that sort of presence?
Well, he's very explosive, very disruptive. He's in the backfield a lot, so you got to know exactly where he is all the time. Plays really, really hard, plays with good leverage. Like you said, one of the best tackles in the country, one of the best football players in the country. And you can see it. He's very, very productive. So it'll be a big challenge for our guys up front, and we'll have to know exactly where he is.
And final two questions, or final three questions. Spencer, you got one? Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Yeah, Ryan, kind of going off of that, when you're trying to get Matthew Jones healthy and then you've got experience with Luke, your tackles are as solid as anybody in the country, but how important is it going to be for you guys to make sure that guard, center, guard is as on their A game as possible in this game against the front like Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you have to drill it, you have to work it all month, you have to talk about it, you have to give them a plan, and that'll be a big part of the game for sure. Is winning the game up front, like it always is, but certainly in the interior, it's going to be even more amplified.
And Clay Hall, WSYX.
Coach, you said a few months ago, let's cut to the chase here on NIL, it would take $13 million to maintain the roster. Where is the Ohio State kitty right now? How far or how close to that figure?
Right, and I think that's the thing that we're working towards, but it's here. It's not, and like you said about the NCAA, right now it's not going anywhere. So, embracing it and moving forward and having all those things working towards exactly that is where we all have to be and where we're going. And so, I don't know exactly where we're at with all that right now, but that's the goal. I mean, that has to be it. And, we're all in. And, again, we got to do everything we can to fight for our players to make sure they have what they need. And we got to be on the forefront of that. So that's important. And, our players need to know that we're fighting for them. We are. And the same thing with recruits.
And final question, Jeremy Birmingham, Rivals.
Ryan, with all of these fundamental changes happening around the game and priorities changing for recruits and their families and the transfer portal and all the tampering and everything else that's going on, at what point do you have to consider if you need to make fundamental wholesale changes to your approach, whether in the transfer portal or on the recruiting trail? When do you, how tough is it to sort of balance what you think is right versus what you see happening?
I think you figure out, okay, first off, is it an upgrade, on the field? And then there's the culture part of it. And so you just, you kind of look at your roster and figure out what needs to be done. If you feel like you're healthy in one spot, whether with talent, with culture, then, you don't need to make a change just to make a change. But if there's a hole in a certain area, you got to get it fixed. And how do you do that? Do you get it fixed through high school recruits or you get it fixed through the portal? And so those are really the two things you try to identify. Do you have enough talent there physically, and then where's the culture and where's the fit? Because somebody who fits at Ohio State maybe doesn't fit it somewhere else, and vice versa. I think it's very, very important to understand, what it means to be a Buckeye, and then just the culture of the team. Understanding what's important here and how we do things. So I think you look at those two things, and if it needs to change, then you change it. Constantly identifying it and trying to get it better.
There's a a line in the sand at some point where you have to say, as a program, okay, we've tried to do it the right way, and now to keep up, this has to happen?
In terms of what?
Like just changing the overall philosophy as far as the transfer portal. You've been very, very reluctant to dive into it unless it was a clear upgrade. And now you see players willing to move in and out of rosters just for NIL opportunities or tampering that happened with former coaches they used to know or whatever. I mean, is there a moment where you sit down and say, maybe we need to rethink it?
I mean, we rethink it all the time. If we had 10 to 12 to 15 guys entering the portal and we had to replace those guys, then certainly we would consider that. But, when we're signing 20 high school players every year and we don't have a lot of guys leaving the program, there's not a lot of room for that. But we're certainly looking at everybody and, having guys on visits and things like that. So we're always looking at it to see if it makes sense. But to say, we're just going to go recruit 15 transfer guys and bring them in just to say we're bringing in 15 transfer guys. No, we're not going to do that. But every year, maybe you take one, maybe you take 5, maybe you take 10. I don't know. We'll have to continually figure that out on a year-to-year basis. But to sit here and say I just think we're going to go out and start recruiting a bunch of guys in the portal philosophically, it'd have to make sense for the roster, which I'm not against. It's just only if we think it's an upgrade and the right fit.
Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.